Okay, so hello and welcome to yet another Gaming Masters video. So today we're going to be talking about Battlefield 2016. Once again, we know the title, we know where it's going to be focused. I'm going to be talking about future possibilities for Battlefield 1, what could possibly be included, what they could possibly do to improve the game, and a few other different topics that could possibly be discussed about the title. Now, obviously, Battlefield 1 is going to be a major focus for EA at E3 2016, which will be in just under 10 days for EA. So, it's definitely going to be a very interesting show. However, we don't have a huge amount of background regarding what extra features we're going to be getting in the game, if there's going to be any huge major changes or anything like that. So I'm just going to be discussing that. I'm going to be talking about what kind of features I think they should really put in the game before launch, or what features I think that they're going to be implementing. So, for starters, I'm going to be talking about what features have been confirmed to be in the game. Now, there's going to be quite a strong implementation of melee combat with quite a bit of variety in terms of the weapons, which is definitely going to be interesting because the way that the melee weapons have worked in the past, excluding Battlefield Hardline, is it tends to be knives. Now, Battlefield Hardline, they varied it up a little bit. They added the melee batons and baseball bats and things like that. I think they were just testing the waters a bit to see if the Battlefield franchise liked it. Not many people complained about it, as far as I'm aware, and we're going back to military shooter, but in the past with World War One, so they're going to be using the World War One melee weapons alongside with it. So they're going to be using your kind of like spades and shovels and things like that, which definitely look very interesting in the brief trailer that we have received so far. Now, in terms of releases, I'm fairly confident that there will be upgraded servers, pretty much guaranteed, especially after the abandoning of last gen platforms, so that is Xbox 360 and PS3. So the game won't be released on those platforms, meaning that the server infrastructure behind it won't necessarily be held behind, because the tick rate and the kind of like server infrastructure in some ways relies on the platform as well. And with Xbox One and PS4 and PC, you can run higher tick rate servers in comparison to PS3 and Xbox 360. So I believe on console during the CCE period, now I'm not sure if they're doing anything more with Battlefield 4 or Hardline. I think they might have ended support. There might be a possible patch here or there for them in between now and October. But it's definitely interesting seeing what they're going to do with the server and the tick rate infrastructure, because I would be highly surprised if they don't do 60 Hz as a minimum across all platforms. I think that they tested 40 on Battlefield 4. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they definitely did try upping the tick rate on the CCE very briefly. Now, the maps are apparently going to be the largest ever material that we have ever received in the game, because the campaign is going to be going from different perspectives of characters in the war. So it's not going to be just following one storyline, it's going to be following a few different storylines across the world. So that's going to be the largest kind of like campaign coming to Battlefield. As far as we can tell, it's not been mentioned that that's what they're going to be doing, but that is basically they have implied that it's going to be a very large campaign, because it does follow these multiple different perspectives across the whole of the war, from different players. So then we're going to be having a look at the multiplayer maps. Now, they have already stated that they're going to be having the largest maps ever in the Battlefield franchise. They're also going to be having some of the smallest maps ever in the Battlefield franchise. So it's going to be quite a contrast comparing between the two different the different kind of like map sizes, because typically Battlefielders look for the large open scale warfare in comparison to the smaller, more compact and confined maps that you find in games like Call of Duty and Titanfall, at least the original Titanfall. So I'm not sure how it will necessarily work. Quite a few people have mentioned, oh, I hope it's not going to be like the block, because the block was very compact. It was full of buildings absolutely everywhere. With 64 players, so that's 32 versus 32, it was very, very clusterfucky, and you had grenades everywhere and things like that. And people didn't particularly like that, even though we do like metros with close quarters infantry combat, like Operation Metro. You don't want to be having the complete like with Metro you have many different routes that you can follow, whereas with the block you could only really follow 2, possibly 3, unless you were going to be climbing through buildings, etc., all the way through. So it ended up being very hard to navigate around and avoiding choke points. So it would definitely be interesting to see what they do with that, how open they are, if they have a huge number of buildings in the maps, if they have loads of trees and foliage, what they kind of like do with the vehicles, how many vehicles are going to be on the maps, if game modes are going to be specific to specific maps instead than just every game mode suits every map. Now, I believe what they're going to be doing is they're going to do maps specific to specific game modes. So, for example, if a game mode doesn't work on TDM, for example, because it's too big, they can't, like, because what they did with Battlefield 4 was they designed the game modes surrounding Conquest Large, and then they shrunk them down as needed for the other game modes. Whereas with this, I hope they're going to do what they did in some ways with Battlefield Hardline, where, for example, okay, Hotwire does not work on this map because of XYZ, so we're not going to include Hotwire on this map. However, it does work very well with, I don't know, TDM, so let's put TDM on this map. Now, that worked very well, and the way that they did it was with no issues at all. I think that a way that they could possibly improve is people that use a custom server infrastructure where you can rent your own server. You can still put whatever game mode you want on there, but the official servers do not support the kind of like game modes that the maps aren't designed for. You can still earn XP through rented servers, but they're not going to be going through the official playlists. That might be an interesting concept. Not sure how it would work necessarily, but it would definitely be interesting if they do that. Now, going over to vehicles, vehicles have always been a huge part of the Battlefield franchise. We have always been looking for tanks, we've always been looking for pretty much every kind of vehicle. Now, obviously, going back to World War One, there were not a huge number of vehicles around. There were obviously a few here or there, and they were very prototype-like. So you're not going to have your armoured jeeps going through the middle of the desert. You're going to be having very enclosed and metal-covered vehicles, which, even though they are supposedly anti-bullet kind of thing, they won't be armoured enough to, like, even if they're armoured, the bullets could still get through, is what I'm trying to say here. And tanks were a very rare occurrence, if any, during World War One. So it'd definitely be interesting to see what they do in terms of vehicles, how many they put per map of each thing, because they tend to try and limit the number of vehicles for each team, so it's not over inundated with vehicles. However, with such a small variety of vehicles going to be available, as far as we know at this moment in time, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with these vehicles that are going to be implemented in the game. Moving on to the campaign, I think that the way that they are going to do the campaign is definitely going to be something. I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to balance out between the multiplayer fans and the single player fans. Now, Battlefield has generally always been about the multiplayer game mode. However, there are always people that are going to be playing the campaign. Now, this is part of a history lesson in some aspects because it's going back to the past. So if they implemented real-life stories, real-life history as such into the campaign, gamers that want to have a bit of a history lesson, find out a bit of a background behind World War One, would really enjoy the campaign. I'm definitely looking forwards to the campaign with a kind of like World War One theme, experiencing the different kind of storylines that they've been teasing. So it will be interesting to see what they do with that. Weapon customization will probably only be featured in the multiplayer, as you would expect. However, I'm not sure how they're going to be able to implement weapon skin customization into a shooter of this era. Mainly because it isn't particularly realistic. Call of Duty you have a look at, and typically Call of Duty is designed for people that are not necessarily casual gamers, don't get me wrong, because people make a lot of money through Call of Duty. It's a very esports focused title, but it's not for the realistic modern FPS shooter kind of like simulator. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be a bit of fun as such, so you can have these absolutely insane skins with like LED lights glowing on the side of it and waves and things like that, like animated skins. You can't get that in real life, especially during World War One. So I think the way that they're going to be implementing weapon skins would definitely be interesting. Whether or not they do it depending on faction, which kind of like enemies you have in the multiplayer, I don't think they've revealed just of yet, because it is a world war, they're going to be going all over the world, so I'm not 100% sure what the specified factions for it. I think it was briefly revealed somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure as to what that entails for the matches, but it would definitely be interesting to see if like certain teams only have access to certain skins that were designated to that faction during World War One, for example, like more common weapons. Now, I hope that the weapons are going to be similar to Battlefield 4 in the aspect, Battlefield Hardline, sorry, in the aspect of their faction specific. So if you're going to be using the criminals, for example, in Battlefield Hardline, this is, you can only access weapons that criminals would use. Then if you're a cop, you're going to only be able to access weapons that cops can use. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the progression system, because Battlefield Hardline, you generated enough money to buy these weapons and then you'll be able to use them. You didn't go through a progression system where you had to get enough XP to unlock them. I'm not 100% sure as to which way of unlocking these weapons I prefer. Personally, I liked the Battlefield 4 way of earning XP. You get rewarded with these new weapons, you build up the XP in each class. However, the difference with that is it can take quite a long time to be able to generate enough XP in each class to unlock every single weapon. Whereas if you have a look at Hardline, you could just play with with just one class, one gun, and just play continuously, and you'll still be able to earn enough money to be able to buy the guns in the rest of the game whenever you wanted to do them. So if you wanted to save up for, I don't know, a Scout Elite, for example, if you were wanting to go for a sniper, you could still save up for it. You're just going to have to take a little while to get that XP, even if you haven't used this class before. So it would definitely be interesting to see what they do with that. Gadgets, I suspect, are going to be very limited in you're going to be having the gas masks, because we have seen gas clouds in the game so far. So you're going to be limited in the number of gadgets you have, the number of weapons that you have, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know a huge amount about World War 1. These are just my general opinions of what I think could be possible during the release of Battlefield 1. Now, I am going to be playing Battlefield 1 in less than 10 days when I'm going to be at EA Play. Now, if I'm allowed to talk about my experience with the game, of course I will. If I can't, I'm sorry, but I will talk about the information that they unveiled in the press conference to the general public. So hopefully we will be able to shed some more information regarding Battlefield 1 in 10 days' time or so. I'm definitely really looking forward to it. I'm not 100% sure as to what I think of the game, because the way that my perception has been built about it is it's going to be really good fun. It's definitely something that looks beautiful. It's across the world, loads of different maps and a variety of gameplay, and they seem to be focusing a bit more on campaign than they have in the previous games. However, the problem with it is future content for the game is going to be limited, and when they launch the game, I don't want them to have too many weapons, too many guns, gadgets, too many vehicles, etc. Because if they do release DLC, however they release DLC, whether it be free or whether it be through a premium subscription service like usual, for example, a season pass, I don't know how they're going to be able to add 4 DLCs worth of content other than different maps. Now, obviously maps are fairly easy to come up with concepts as such, and you have the whole world because it's a World War 1. However, in the aspect of gadgets and weapons and vehicles, you're somewhat limited. So it will be interesting to see what they do with post-launch support. I hope that it's going to be similar to the way that Rainbow Six Siege has worked, where Season Pass holders get the content for free 7 days early, and then all other all other people that played the game get the rest of the maps for free. That would definitely be interesting, and then also the Season Pass in retrospective would be a bit cheaper, and you might get a few extra bonuses here or there and things like that. That would definitely be interesting. I really like that kind of like infrastructure behind the subscription service. At least with Rainbow Six Siege, not sure how it will work with Battlefield 1, but we'll see what happens. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk about Battlefield 1 before the E3 press conference. If we do get any more information, of course, I will update you as soon as possible, both here on the podcast and also on our YouTube videos as and when needed. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to like, follow, and of course, as always, subscribe. It's very much appreciated and really does give us a helping hand to know if you've liked the content. If you do comment below, we can decide what we can do with future episodes, how we can do it, if you want other people on the panel, etc. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for listening, and we shall see you in the next video.